Hi everyone, welcome to my talk. As you can see from the title slide here, it's called Working with Influencers to Generate Foot or Web Traffic. Who am I? Hi, I'm Laryssa. I'm the founder and creative director of Joya, which is a boutique digital marketing agency for jewelry brands. We're based in Los Angeles. I'm very passionate and capable of handling all forms of digital marketing, but I'm particularly interested in influencer marketing because I think it's a really unique way to approach digital marketing. And I love helping jewelry brands connect with their target audiences through digital marketing platforms. So here's a cute dog. And I want to ask all of you in the audience, what do you already know about influencer marketing? I want to hear some of your thoughts. Any brave people want to volunteer anything that they know about influencer marketing? Yeah.
What I really like about influencer marketing are the small and large communities around different types of influencers. Like you can connect with a minority community or a certain age community, and it doesn't matter, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but you don't need to seek out influencers that necessarily have 10 million followers as long as their interactions with their fan base is positive.
Yeah, great. Anyone else? Any other thoughts you guys know? Yeah.
Hi, so I actually spent a bit of money on influencer marketing, and it hasn't really worked for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
I think a lot of the time the influencers tend to just take the money, post a photo, and I haven't seen any return on investment at all, which is very upsetting.
Great, thank you for your honest comment. And we'll talk a little more about that in this presentation. Anything else? Yeah.
Good morning. I am from a small country in Central America, and from what I've seen, social media using influencers has brought some small businesses. For example, there's one business that is run by one lady that does very unique jewelry, and she has amassed a huge following based on simply getting a lot of feedback from her customers, and also having people who buy her jewelry post about it and say about talk about how much they love it. And I've seen her go from one small shop in the southern part of Belize, like pretty much in like a back alley, to having two shops and going back and forth and just having a lot of people enjoy and post about her products. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. Great. Well, let me share with you some interesting statistics and facts about influencer marketing before we move on. So as you can see from the quote there, influencer marketing will become a $10 billion business by 2020. 59% of marketers intend to increase their influencer marketing budget in the next year. And finally, 28% of companies consider influencer marketing to be the fastest growing online customer acquisition channel. So just some things to keep in mind as we move forward. Here we have some familiar influencers, or they may or may not be familiar to you. You probably won't be working with these influencers because, for example, in the top left, we have Kylie Jenner, and she's reportedly the highest paid influencer. She makes about $1 million per post. So unless you have a budget like that, you probably won't be working with her. Going clockwise from top left, we have Kendall Jenner. She has 115 million Instagram followers. Alexa Chung, 3.4 million Instagram followers. And Chiara Ferragni, 17.2 million Instagram followers. So now that you've seen some examples of influencers and I've given you some interesting facts and statistics, you still may be struggling to define what exactly is an influencer. It's kind of a nebulous term. Usually we associate influencers with Instagram. That's kind of the default these days. And 93% of influencer marketing campaigns actually do use Instagram, so that's not an error to do that. However, that doesn't really paint the whole picture about influencer marketing. As you can see from my definition here, an influencer, plain and simple, is just a person who has social clout or exceptional knowledge in his or her chosen field. We tend to associate them with the fashion industry and Instagram, as I said, but the truth is that influencers span multiple industries and can be found in many places, including countless digital platforms and even in real life communities, both on micro and macro levels. We tend to categorize influencers based on the number of followers they have. So there are really 4 different categories of influencers, again, based on their follower counts. I want you to keep in mind during this slide and as we move forward in the presentation, just because someone has more followers doesn't necessarily make them a better influencer. In fact, you'll probably get better return on investment if you work with a micro or even nano influencer. So let's go through these 4 categories really quickly. A mega influencer, those are the people like Kylie and Kendall Jenner. They have over 1 million followers. A macro influencer is someone with between 100,000 and 1 million followers. A micro influencer has 1,000 to 100,000, and finally a nano influencer has less than 1,000. Yes, someone with less than 1,000 followers can still be considered an influencer. You may be asking yourself as you're sitting out there in the audience, is now the right time to move forward with an influencer marketing campaign if you haven't done so already? Well, there are some brands that benefit more from influencer marketing than others. These can be new brands that are hoping to gain exposure, brands launching new products or collections, brands hoping to reach new audiences that they haven't targeted previously, or brands that simply don't have time to wait for other marketing initiatives, which can take months or even years to execute. Before you move forward with an influencer marketing campaign, you want to make sure you have the right foundation in place. So that means you have a coherent look, tone, feel for your brand. A professional and easy to navigate website, attractive and regularly updated social media profiles, a really clear view of who your customers are, and super clear goals. If you don't have those things in place, influencer marketing is simply not going to work for you. What can influencers offer your brand? Why should you even bother working with them? Well, they can offer you a number of things. 1, brand awareness. And brand awareness is actually the top reason, not sales conversions, but brand awareness that brands decide to work with influencers. In fact, you can see from the quote in the bottom right, 78% of marketing professionals cite brand awareness as the reason they work on influencer partnerships. Can anyone tell me what might be the tricky thing about throwing money at something that is meant to create brand awareness?
I think you're looking for a long-tail ROI, so you can't really expect to get, a 3-to-1 immediately. It can take 6 months to a year.
Exactly. It can be hard to track ROI, or it can be over a long period of time. So it's difficult to see an immediate result or a direct correlation. The tricky part about influencer marketing that we'll talk about very soon. But other ways that influencers can help your brand: content creation, building trust, search engine optimization, and also customer feedback. Now, the whole theme of this conference is how can influencers drive foot or web traffic? So I want to break down each one of those benefits and show you how that can help you drive traffic. So in terms of brand awareness, influencers can help create awareness of your brand more quickly than some other marketing strategies that can take months or even years. The impact is immediate. As a result, you can get immediate traffic to your e-commerce or brick and mortar store when an influencer is creating brand awareness. Content creation. If you guys handle your own social media or content marketing, you know that creating content is a huge challenge and responsibility. Keeping on top of that is a lot of work. When you work with an influencer, he or she can outsource some of that content for you and support your content creation efforts. And over time, it will just provide more exposure for your brand and draw people into your store. Building trust. When an influencer brings you into his or her circle of trust, then the audience can immediately trust you. It's an ongoing endorsement of your brand. Search engine optimization. This is one benefit of influencer marketing that a lot of people don't really consider or talk about, But if you're working with an influencer, especially who has a blog and not just a social media presence, if he or she is posting links to your store on that blog or mentioning your name in content, that can actually help your search engine optimization. And in some cases, that benefit is one of the best ones of influencer marketing. And lastly, you can get real-time customer feedback from influencer marketing. So if an influencer writes a post about you on Instagram, for example, you can monitor the comments of that post and get real-time feedback from prospective customers about what they do and don't like about your products. And they're going to be really honest about that. So it's a great way to see what you are doing well and not so well. You may be surprised to discover that there's more than one way to approach influencer marketing. There are actually 4 main ways, and we're going to dive more in depth into each one of these in the upcoming slides. The first way to approach influencer marketing is through events. The second way is through long-term partnerships. The third is through one-time product placements. And finally, collaborations. Let's dive a little more deep into the first approach, which is events. So this approach to influencer marketing actually marries the best of influencer marketing with the best of event or experiential marketing, which is becoming extremely important for jewelry brands today. By experiential marketing, I mean pop-ups, trunk shows, in-store events. So you're combining that with influencer marketing in this particular approach. There are 2 ways to go about doing this. You can either invite the influencer to the event so that attendees have another reason to come to your event, or you can simply work with a local influencer, someone who's local to the area of your event, have them promote it, but not necessarily attend it. The next approach, and what I personally think is the most effective approach to influencer marketing, is long-term partnerships. For a long-term partnership to work, you're going to have to take the time and effort to find an influencer that is a genuine and fierce supporter of your brand, because they're going to be working with you for the long term. In this type of approach, the influencer actually becomes absorbed as your brand. They become part of your brand identity. And over time, because the influencer is producing content for you, you can use that content on your own social and content channels and have an association with that influencer that can last for months or even years. The next approach is one-time product placements. If you spend any time on social media, you've probably seen these many times. It is one of the most popular approaches to influencer marketing. Why? Because it carries the least amount of risk, because it's usually for a very short period of time. If you're a jewelry brand that's just hoping to get your feet wet with influencer marketing, this probably will be the right approach for you because it will help you test out. However, the downside to it is influencer marketing can take a lot of time and research to get set up. So for all of that time and research, to only do a short one-time product placement may not be worth it for you. In that case, the long-term partnership that we just mentioned might be a better way to approach influencer marketing. The advantage of doing one-time product placements, or another advantage, is that you can get lots of diverse content for your social media channels, especially if you do this approach with multiple influencers at once, instead of working with only one for a long period of time. And the final approach that we mentioned is collaborations. In this approach, the influencer actually plays a hands-on role in your brand. They could either design a product or collection, or the influencer could do a styling takeover, which means that they can play a role in styling your next photo shoot or ad campaign, or they can showcase the styling on their own social media channels. Now that you know about these 4 approaches, I'm going to dive even deeper and tell you about some examples of jewelry brands that have successfully used each one of these approaches. And you can see a little summary here on the left side. I do want to point out that you might have some hesitation about seeing names like David Yurman, that these approaches can be scalable to any type of jewelry brand, no matter what your size, whether you're e-commerce, whether you're brick and mortar. I just happen to use these examples because I think they're really striking. But again, can always be scalable depending on your goals, target audience, and budget. Simon G. Jewelry I'm using as an example of the events approach to influencer marketing. If you're not familiar with them, they're a Southern California-based jewelry design brand. They are known for their award-winning designs, specifically in bridal jewelry, and they sell through retailers nationwide. In 2018, the brand launched an influencer marketing campaign to support their retail partners. So what they did was they chose 5 key retail stores in different parts of the country to host trunk shows. And then they leveraged local influencers in the local areas of each of those trunk shows to promote them. To add an even extra layer to this event approach to influencer marketing, they also leveraged paid social media advertising. So during this influencer marketing campaign, when they were doing their initial research, they searched for fashion and lifestyle influencers who they felt embodied luxury and expressed authenticity. The Vice President of Marketing and Communications, Brooke Brinkman, says, quote, "They were looking for someone who would truly wear the product, not someone who just has a strong audience but is posting about lip gloss and water." And they claim the campaign to have been a success. National Jeweler, if you're interested in knowing more about this, there's a great article about this case study at National Jeweler, and I just put a quote up here. The entire campaign accrued 873,547 impressions, with an average about 3% engagement and 15,482 likes. And there's a great explanation in that article that breaks down how they did this campaign. I think it's a really interesting and effective example of the events approach to influencer marketing. And that little picture in the top corner is an example, one of the influencers showing off her, the wedding band she's trying on. David Yurman is a really great example of the long-term partnership approach to influencer marketing. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this brand. They are a New York City-based jewelry brand with boutiques all over the world. And their long-term partnership was with an influencer named Blair Edie. She's the creator of a popular fashion blog named Atlantic Pacific. So David Yurman actually partnered with Blair Edie over the course of many years, at least 3 years. And in one example from 2017, there's a post on Blair's blog where she's showing her readers how to style David Yurman's cable bracelets, which she pairs with some pieces from J. Crew and H&M. And we know that this is a paid long-term sponsorship post because at the end of the post, she says, "Thank you to David Yurman for partnering on this post." So the benefit to David Yurman for working with Blair Edie on influencer marketing is that over the years, David Yurman was able to repurpose that content over and over again on their own feeds and use Blair's beautiful styling perspective and absorb it into their own brand. And here I have a screenshot from David Yurman's Facebook page with a close-up picture of Blair Edie wearing some of their rings. So the one-time product placement approach, as I mentioned before, is kind of the most widely used one. When I was making this presentation, I had trouble choosing just one brand as an example because there's so many. If you follow jewelry on Instagram, you'll just see this when you open your Instagram app. Here I just focused on 2 up-and-coming e-commerce brands that cater mostly to the millennial generation. That's Jewelry and Orate. So I want to reiterate that these one-time product placement campaigns work best for brands that want an increase in their social media followers, a boost in brand awareness, or to have the platform to promote the launch of a new product or collection. These one-time campaigns, again, also work really well for brands that want to test the waters of influencer marketing. One potential downside to doing these product placement campaigns is these influencers, like we have Jeanette Madsen in this picture, they tend to work with multiple brands at once. So in a one-time product campaign, there is usually no exclusivity. They could be working with multiple jewelry brands at the same time. And I've seen this many times before, that an influencer will be wearing like one bangle from one brand and like earrings from another brand and a necklace from another brand, all in the same post. If you don't feel comfortable with that, I don't think I would feel comfortable with that, then one-time product placement might not be the best approach for you unless you have a conversation with the influencer about your expectations regarding that. So it's just something to keep in mind. And Misoma is a really great example of the collaboration approach to influencer marketing. So they are a UK-based jewelry brand. They recently partnered with the influencer Lucy Williams. She collaborated with the brand on a collection called 1987, inspired by 80s and 90s nostalgia. So she had a hands-on role in the creative design and production of this collection that they released. The really cool thing about doing the collaboration approach to influencer marketing is that the influencer has a huge stake in that jewelry. So you're not just giving them a paycheck, you're giving them creative ownership. What does that mean? They'll be more likely to promote the jewelry themselves. And usually with these collaborative partnerships, these brands use a hashtag. So you'll see I wrote it there, Lucy Williams x Misoma. So anyone that wears the jewelry can use that hashtag to showcase how they style it. And Lucy Williams on her own feed is showing off her jewelry because she takes ownership of it. So in that way, it's like you get an even more enthusiastic brand partner when you take the collaborative approach to influencer marketing. At this point, you're probably wondering about ROI and expectations. I want to be honest with you and let you know that you won't be able to set your expectations for return on investment or ROI until you set your campaign goals. So there are a few steps that you're going to have to take before you can even start to think about ROI. First, you'll want to set your campaign goals. The most common goals include increasing brand awareness, and as we learned earlier in the presentation, that's one of the most common goals for influencer marketing. Another goal could be to reach new customers, increase sales, or create new content. After you set your campaign goals, you'll want to define your key performance indicators or KPIs. Those can range anywhere from engagement to clicks, impressions, conversions. And finally, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to track those KPIs. And you can use a free tool like Google Analytics or built-in Instagram and Facebook Analytics, or a social media analytics tool like Iconosquare. To give you, although I cannot generalize about ROI for all jewelry brands because everyone is different, everyone has different goals and needs and budget, and it's really hard to kind of give an overall generalization, I can share some facts and stats with you. So you're probably wondering about cost. When it comes to Instagram, usually the typical formula is that influencers charge around $1,000 per every 100,000 followers. So you can kind of use that number to gauge and scale or back from there. And then in general, these are some interesting stats about ROI. So first, campaigns focused on branding or engagements generate 8 times ROI over paid advertisements with the same goal. So it is very possible that influencer marketing can be more effective than those Facebook ads that you're running and not getting results from. E-commerce ROI returned approximately 80 cents per $1 spent. So you're probably looking at that and thinking, so I'm losing money on influencer marketing? Yeah, that's the tricky thing about it. I don't want to let those numbers discourage you because they don't really consider the value of brand awareness. And as I forget, someone mentioned, they don't necessarily catch customers who purchase later in the sales funnel. So it's sometimes really hard to determine the direct ROI that you're getting from your influencer marketing spend. And finally, I mentioned this before, the larger the influencer, the lower the return on investment. So spending $1 million on a post with Kylie Jenner might be the worst idea you ever had, even if you can afford it. So in the previous slide, I mentioned some typical goals for influencer marketing campaigns, and I also mentioned that you have to choose KPIs. The KPIs will vary based on the goal that you choose, so I kind of just wanted to give you some ideas of the types of KPIs you might be looking at for different goals. If your goal is content creation, then you want to look at KPIs like likes, engagement, clicks, comments, volume of content. If your goal is brand awareness, again, the most common goal, you'll want to look at things like customer opinion, purchase intent, follower growth, and web and in-store traffic. And finally, if your goal is sales conversions, you'll want to look at things like conversions, coupon discount code use, and shopping cart abandonment rate. It's really important to kind of see how these KPIs vary by goal. If your goal is brand awareness, you're not going to look at conversions. I know it's going to be tempting to want to do that because conversions is the easiest way to see an ROI for sure, but that's not the KPI that you're going to want to use to measure brand awareness. So really important to keep in mind. Okay, so hopefully at this point in the presentation, most of you feel way more prepared to move forward with an influencer marketing campaign than you did when you stepped into this room. But now that you feel prepared, you have to prepare your brand. How can you do that? Again, influencer marketing isn't for every jewelry brand. That's definitely true. And even if it is right for you, it may not be the right time. There's definitely a time and season for influencer marketing to be right for a brand. Before you move forward with even thinking about doing it, you have to prepare your brand. You need to know your customers inside and out. And you can do that by analyzing your data, either from past purchase history or Google Analytics, and then creating customer personas. If you don't know your customers, you won't know which influencer to choose. You want to consider scanning your competition. What are your competitors doing with influencer marketing? How does it seem to work or not work for them? You want to audit your branding. When was the last time you took a look at your look, tone, feel? When was the last time you updated your branding? Does your branding look professional, enticing? Is it right for your target audience? Is it consistent and memorable? Now might be a time to do a complete brand audit. And lastly, you want to definitely boost your social presence. If you haven't been taking the time to work on a social media strategy and executing it effectively, then no amount of influencer marketing is going to help you. Because if someone sees a piece on an influencer on Instagram, they may go to your profile. If they see a really ugly feed, all your efforts with influencer marketing have gone out the window. So you want to come in there super prepared so that when customers come back to you, they still like what they see. How can you find influencers? There are a few different methods of doing this. The first way is you can try using hashtags. So once you are so familiar with your customers, you know them inside and out, you know them so well that you can actually tell what kind of hashtags they look for on Instagram. You can look at some of those hashtags and see who are the most influential people posting under those hashtags. It can kind of start helping move forward the research process, and you can get a sense and familiarize yourself with the influencers that your customers are interested in. You can do a simple Google search. This is a good step in preliminary research. You can search for different lists of influencers. Likely, you're going to get lists of people that are mega influencers, so they'll have like Kylie Jenner on them and other people that might not be right for your brand. I keep using her as an example. But it's a good place to start, to just kind of get your brain thinking about influencers. You can look at your competitors. Who are they using for influencers? And who are some people who are similar to them or work in the same communities? There are also a lot of paid tools now on the market that will manage influencer marketing campaigns from start to finish. So they will identify the influencers that are right for you and take out the step of you having to do the research. And it'll also monitor things like campaign progress, and it'll help you track your KPIs and the results of your campaign. What's the downside of using a paid tool? Well, it costs money. Money that you could be putting toward your influencer. So unless that's part of your influencer marketing budget, you may or may not want to use that. Some other things I didn't put on this slide, but that are also ways to find influencers, or you can use Instagram's search and explore tool. You can actually ask your current customers. So if you are on Instagram and you post Instagram stories, you may see there's an option to do a poll. You can poll your customers and say, hey, like, who are some of the fashion influencers that are your favorite? Who are your favorite people to follow? You can use your email marketing to send out maybe a survey or ask your customers, where do they like to spend their time online? So don't be afraid to ask people. And finally, you can look for real life influencers in your community. They can be local television personalities, maybe they're like newscasters or local politicians. You'd be surprised how many influencers are right under your nose in your local community. Once you start doing your preliminary research and you get ideas for influencers that you may want to start pursuing, you'll want to determine whether or not the influencer is truly a good fit for your brand. And there are a few steps that you can take to do that. One, relationship. Now, the relationship building won't come until afterward when you actually contact the person, but it's something you want to keep in the back of your head. If the influencer always feels like a stranger to you during the initial correspondence process, then that person isn't going to be a good fit. You want to work with someone who is a strong supporter of your brand. This is going to be a brand ambassador. This is someone who should be enthusiastic about your brand. If they're not, forget that person. You don't want to work with them. You want to build a relationship on trust and mutual admiration. 2, target customers. If the influencer's audience doesn't share the same customers that are in your target demographic, then that's not the right person for you. 3, quality. Look at the types of content that they're posting. Would you be proud to share that content? Is it professional, captivating, interesting? If not, forget that person. And finally, the most obvious way to determine the influencer is a good fit is your budget. If the person charges more than you can afford, you're not working with them. So many steps, guys. The next thing, once you determine they're a good fit, is you have to actually verify their influence. 63% of marketers and brands admitted to having personal experience with influencer fraud in past campaigns. I don't want to scare you, I just want to make you aware of this issue. You really have to verify that an influencer is actually an influencer, because unfortunately these days it's very easy to buy followers and likes on social media. So you want to make sure that the person is actually influential within their sphere. So one way you can do that is to evaluate engagement. You can follow a formula like calculating their like to follow ratio, or if you want to be more casual about it, you can just monitor the quality of their comments. So you can go to a few of their posts and look for yourself, just open it up, look at the comments. If you see a lot of comments that are like, nice, cool, I like it, great, be a little suspicious of that. If you see comments mixed into that like something very genuine, like, wow, this is a beautiful necklace, I think I would love to buy myself this for my birthday, or something that just has a little more thought behind it, that shows, excuse me, that shows that probably the influencer has genuine engagement. Another way to verify influence is to monitor their follower growth. So people that use the paid services where they buy followers, they usually have very heavily fluctuating follower counts. So if you visit an influencer's profile one day and they have like 10,000 followers and the next day they have like 17,000 followers, something's probably wrong there. You want to check multiple platforms. So this is what I like to call Google stalking. If you've ever Google stalked anyone, then you're already an expert and you can do that for your influencer. So that just really means Googling the person, doing like a little bit of background research, seeing where else they have a presence online. Has anyone said anything negative about this person? Just do your due diligence before you really decide to work with someone. Now you are ready to contact the influencer. Congratulations, you've made it to this step. You want to find the contact information, which influencers that are actively working, they want to work with brands, they're going to make it easy for you to contact them. So you can usually find the contact information on the social media profile or a contact page on a website. Do keep in mind though that some of the larger influencers actually have agents, or they work with management companies. So when you contact them, you won't be speaking to them directly. You'll actually be speaking to a third party that manages the person. If you don't like that, then don't work with that influencer. It's as simple as that. There are a lot of influencers that handle their own business, and there are a lot that don't. So that's kind of a personal preference thing. When you reach out to them, you want to impress them just as much as they're impressing you. Be specific and professional. Point out some recent posts that they did that you thought were really great and what you liked about them and why you would be so excited to work with them and why you think they would be a really good fit for your brand. And follow the rules of writing a professional business email. Always proofread and check your spelling. Then evaluate your response. Does the person seem enthusiastic and genuine in their response? If not, you may want to move on. Also, if they're kind of unprofessional or they seem a little bit flighty or they're using like strings of emojis and have lots of misspellings in their email, I don't know, you might not want to work with that person. You want to have someone that's easy to communicate with. Otherwise, it's just going to be a challenge from start to finish. Once you've made that initial communication and the person has expressed interest in working with you, you'll want to manage that influencer relationship from start to finish. So the influencer should support and understand your goals. You should be on the same page about what those goals are. You need to set a timeline, whether that's a month, 3 months, 6 months, however long it is, both of you need to agree upon that preset campaign duration. And of course, 100% prepare a contract and have that influencer and you both review and sign the contract. If you're not sure how to do a contract, you can actually go online. I believe Influencer Marketing Hub has like templates you can download, or you can work with someone like me who can handle that for you. This is kind of a side note, but I think it's a very important side note that a lot of people don't think about. Influencers and Federal Trade Commission or FTC laws. You'd be surprised that a lot of marketing agencies never really think about this, but it's super important. So in 2000, the Federal Trade Commission first released guidelines for internet advertising in an effort to kind of create rules and regulations about paid advertising online. And then, because they saw this kind of rise of influencer marketing, in 2009, they revised those guidelines to cover social media endorsements. That just means that any influencer needs to disclose a paid partnership, whether they're getting products or services in exchange for a relationship or they're getting paid. You only 100% want to work with influencers who disclose their paid brand partnerships. It's just the right thing to do. It's a best practice. If you work with people who don't disclose brand partnerships, it can really damage your reputation. Consumers are very savvy and they can tell when someone is promoting an item for the most part, even if they're not disclosing it. So even if the FTC isn't catching that influencer, just don't work with them. It's a negative practice in the industry. So you guys have done a super great job. It's time to launch your influencer marketing campaign. After the influencer marketing campaign has ended, you've gone through the whole duration, you have a really great experience, you want to measure and evaluate. So you'll want to go back to your original goals, as we discussed. You'll want to use those metrics, the KPIs, and the tools that we mentioned earlier. And you'll want to see if you've met your goals. If your original goal was brand awareness and you're suddenly wondering why you didn't have any conversions, well, that's actually a mistake because your original goal was not conversions. So remember, the way that you evaluate has to equal what you originally set out to achieve in the campaign. I love this quote by Mike King. Simply put, if you're not measuring, you're not marketing. And I want to also remind you that if you don't meet your goals, which is quite possible, a lot of marketing is kind of testing and revising and moving forward again. Even if you didn't meet your goals, you'll no doubt have gained really valuable data during this campaign that will help you make more informed marketing decisions in the future, whether that means continuing to pursue influencer marketing or putting your time, money, and effort into another marketing strategy. And now, if my clicker will work, that's wrong. I would like to invite your questions, and really quick before that, if you want more information from me, I am just a wealth of information. You can find me in a number of places on my website, joya.com. I actually have a podcast that I update with new episodes weekly, and the last 5 episodes are all about influencer marketing because I've been preparing for this. So you can find Joya Marketing Podcast on iTunes. You can follow me on Instagram, and you can always email me. I'm happy to share knowledge, Laryssa@joya.com. And thank you. I would love to hear your questions.